Lisa, the scrappy wife behind scrappywife.com, and today I have a fun new crafting project for you. I am excited to work with this beautiful fabric. So I received some different fabric from the new spring line at Joann's, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And of course it has my very favorite color, which would be purple. And I don't get to use fabric very often in the craft room because normally I am working with paper. So I'm excited to use this fabric to help me upcycle a few frames. So I had a friend that was getting rid of some frames as she cleaned out her house, and she had this giant one that has a little bit of damage on the edges, but I'm looking forward to working with this one, and then the shadow box from IKEA that she was not using. And then she had a couple of memo boards. So this one is metal for magnets and things like that. And then this one is all ready for push pins. So I'm going to use my fabric and these frames to kind of put together a new project that I am going to use in the hallway of my house. So I'm super excited to give it a try. I figured I would show you guys what I was doing and just fun ways you can use fabric even if you aren't someone that is a seamstress or really great at sewing. Fabric is gorgeous, and if you love the pattern, you can find a way to use it. So I will definitely link everything I end up using down below. Otherwise, let's go. All right, I'm out here with my largest frame in my garage, ready to do some spray painting. It has some damage on the corners that I think will actually clean up really nicely once it's spray painted. We are going to do a glossy white spray paint on it, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. This was actually the first of 3 separate coats. You definitely want to do lighter coats, make sure it has pretty good coverage, and then let it dry in between. This was a glossy finish, so it actually dried pretty hard, which I really liked. And it did a good job covering up some of the imperfections that were in this frame just from the wear and tear of regular use. All right, the other thing I want to do while I'm outside and well ventilated is adhere the fabric to this backing that was on that picture frame. I have some spray adhesive right here, so I'll just spray down the picture frame or the backing, adhere the fabric, and I will trim it off when I go back inside and it has dried. So the first thing I did was coat the backing of the frame really well with the spray adhesive, and then I took the material and very carefully laid it over the top and smoothed it out little by little. It is so funny, when this project was done, my daughter thought that I had drawn all of these beautiful florals onto this frame, and it just came out so well. It's such a simple project and I forget about it. Every spring I kind of want to update my decor, and I think I have to go buy a bunch of new things, but this was just reusing things that someone else was throwing out and then just buying this beautiful fabric that is in the colors I love, has this wonderful spring feel. I am so excited to get to update my space for not very much. Once I trimmed off the edge of this fabric, I let it overhang the back just a little bit, and then pretty much just let everything dry, let the frame dry, and then reassembled it, not hard, and I'm so pleased with the results. Okay, I want to work with this memo board, and it's actually super sealed on the back. So I've pulled out my Dremel tool to kind of loosen it and break it apart. The frame has some damage to it, and I could have taped off the fabric part and kind of painted it. There are some options I could have done, but what I wanted to do was see if I could wrap the frame in the same material so that I could create a different look, a really soft look to it. So I'm working really carefully to try to poke out the memo board part, to the burlap part, and loosen it from the frame. And then once that is done, I have cut the material into what I would say are about 3-inch strips. And I'm going to use some Fabri-Tac glue because it is a really strong glue that dries really fast. You could also use hot glue. I just didn't want the bulk of hot glue because I do want that memo board to fit back in, and it is a tight fit. So I glue the first part of my material. I started in the middle of a section instead of at a corner, just so it would be a little bit easier to wrap the corners. And basically what I'm going to do is just wrap and wrap and wrap, moving the material around the frame. I'm really careful on the corners to make sure I get nice coverage. I love that this is a busier looking fabric because I think that actually is more forgiving in this technique. You can certainly go slower and wrap and see more of the pattern, but I just wanted the impression of the pattern. The other thing that I love is that this is has some spandex in it. It has some stretch to it. So I was able to pull it really tight around the frame. And like you saw when I was punching out the memo board, it's a super tight fit. And so I needed the fabric to be snug, to not take up a ton of extra room, or else the whole project would not have gone back together. There are actually several different ways that you can cover a frame with fabric. I happen to think this is one of the easiest because, again, no sewing, nothing except just cutting into strips and wrapping very carefully, very tightly, and using some glue, and the result really is stunning. Okay, once I finished, I secured it again with the Fabri-Tac glue, and now I'm just placing the memo board back in to make sure it will fit. I'll use the Fabri-Tac glue to put a nice line of glue on the inside of the frame. That should hold it pretty well. This isn't going to be in a high traffic spot, if that makes sense. So I think this will be really snug and secure. I work really hard to push it back into place, and then you'll see I actually end up grabbing my heavy typewriter that's over on the side and setting that on top of it just so it stays in place and is secured. Okay, the last project that I'm doing is probably the easiest. All I'm going to do is take this frame, cover the backing with fabric so that it is basically using the fabric as an art print. Again, the Fabri-Tac glue works really well for securing it in place. So I very carefully place it on top, making sure there are no wrinkles, smoothing it out as I go. And I'll let that sit for a second. I'll flip it over and trim off the edges very carefully. One thing I learned through this whole process is that I need a new pair of scissors that is just for fabric. I've heard people say that all the time. And like I said, I'm new to fabric and I haven't used it a whole lot, but now these projects have inspired me. So I'm definitely going to be using fabric a lot more, and I need to get me some fabric scissors. That is for sure. So trimming off all of the excess, and then what I will do is take the matting. This is a paper piece that I had in my collection that is super pretty, very beautiful for spring. I'm going to place it right in the middle. I used the Fabri-Tac glue because I wanted a little bit of play. I didn't want to glue it down and not be able to move it because I needed to center it with where the mat would go. And then I will put that whole project in to the frame. It's a little tricky. I keep catching it on the edges of the frame. There were some options. I could have painted the frame. I kind of liked the black because there is some black in the material, so I think it pulled it out nicely. And it's a nice variation because I'll be able to group these pieces together. They have some similarities with all of the same fabric, but brings it out in different ways, which I really like. And with that, my 3 fabric projects are done. I am amazed at the impact you can make for not very much. So with just really the cost of the fabric and the cost of the spray paint, I was able to create these beautiful projects with pieces that other people were throwing out. You can update a lot of things around your house with fabric, even if you aren't a seamstress. So I really encourage you to think outside the box, be inspired by the beautiful patterns, and see what you can create. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button. I will definitely leave links to everything that I use down below, so check those out if you are interested. Thank you so much to Joann Fabrics for sending me this beautiful fabric to work with. I really, really enjoyed it. I hope that you have a fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.